Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
Speaker Shekarchi, welcome back to the podcast.
My pleasure, Bill. Always enjoy coming on your show.
Right out of the gate here, a lot of people obviously concerned about what seems to be just a fire hose and a continuation of executive orders coming from Washington, and this in tandem with this reconfigured version of, frankly, federal government that seems like we have swayed a lot into at least a moment where the executive branch has outsized authority. We'll see how this all plays out in courts. We'll see how this all plays out with congressional oversight. But from your standpoint right now, is Rhode Island prepared from a budgetary standpoint and from, frankly, not working backwards on some of the legislative initiatives that have taken place during your tenure and prior to that? Are we prepared to leverage against anything that might come our way from Washington?
Well, it's a multi-part question. Let me try to give you a breakdown the answer. So are we prepared budgetarily? The answer is absolutely not. That our state depends dramatically on federal aid. People don't realize there's direct federal aid into certain departments. CRMC is 25, 35% funded federal government. Department of Health, 40% funded, and I can go on and on. That does not include the Medicare and Medicaid money that the state of Rhode Island receives. It's very significant. It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Actually, what we get is in the billions. Any kind of a cut could look at hundreds of millions of dollars of a dramatic shortfall in funding for the poorest of the poor, for the neediest of the needy. And if you ask me, does that keep me up at night? It most certainly does. I can tell you that I was in Washington last weekend at a speakers conference, speaking with speakers from around the country, red state speakers, blue state speakers. We're all very concerned of how this does. We have to govern. We have to balance the budgets. We have to serve the people of our respective states. And I'm very concerned about that. It seems like I used to say every day, but now it seems like every couple of hours, things are changing out of Washington at a pace I've never seen in my life as far as the dramatic shifts. Yes, no, left, right, up, down. It's changing rapidly. It's very hard to keep up. We're keeping a vigilant eye on what's happening. We've been in touch with our congressional delegation, and we will do whatever we have to do to as best as we can. That means that we're going to have to live within our means as a state. If we lose significant amounts of federal money, things will be dramatically different come July 1st in Rhode Island.
That is certainly something that you hear a lot from fiscal conservatives in general, or really anybody who's just got that mindset of moving forward with a balanced or a budget that doesn't necessarily increase dramatically year over year. And of course, we're coming off of a moment where we've seen already APRA dollars decreasing in the post-COVID era. It keeps you up at night, you say. So what are the steps that you and other state legislatures can take really in the face of this moment? What sort of power in a hyper-local sense do state legislators have to be the front lines?
Well, let's separate from some of the other issues from the social issues or the non-fiscal issues. And Rhode Island is very well prepared. We have made significant legislative gains over the last 4 years in many areas. I'm proud of what we've done in terms of reproductive health. I'm proud of what we've done in terms of insurance and coverage and ACA. We've codified a lot of initiatives in the General Assembly, and I'm proud of those things. But what really bothers me is the fiscal thing. Not to go back at, there's not much we can do. We can't, I assure you, Bill, the State House, for those of you who are listening, is a beautiful building. Maybe some of you have never been there. It's a beautiful building, but let me quite assure you, there is no printing press in the basement. We have to, by Constitution, a Rhode Island Constitution, pass a balanced budget. We don't have the luxury of printing money or deficit spending like they do in Washington. So we have to balance our budget. We have to pass a balanced budget. And as I like to say, everything is on the table, from tax increases to significant and decreased cuts in programs. So all of those remain on the table, and there is no sacred cow. There's nothing that I will tell you that we absolutely will or won't do, because we have to keep everything on the table. We just don't know. And hopefully we'll get clarity around the end of April, beginning of May, of where we are. I mean, even in Washington, things are passing by one vote, two votes, and it's subject to negotiation between the House and Senate. We don't know what the final product will look like if it actually becomes a final product. Don't forget that in Washington, they have a federal shutdown in about 3 weeks if they don't get their act together. So that could also dramatically change things. As I said earlier, it's changing rapidly, and we just have to be diligent, vigilant, and be prepared, and we're as prepared as we can be. I have briefings regularly with my budget people. I talk to congressional delegation regularly, and we're doing everything that we humanly possibly can to put Rhode Island in the best position it can be in. And that, by the way, doing all of that, it means we're still in a bad position. We're still in a bad position because we're a state that relies on federal funds, like a lot of other red states, by the way. A lot of poor red states, the Mississippis of the world and the Tennessees of the world, they don't have resources like a Massachusetts or a Texas or a California. So we have to be cognizant of that, and we're not in this alone. The only little bit of grace I can take away from this, and talking to some of my Republican colleagues last weekend in Washington, D.C., was that they're hurting and they're leaning on their Republican representation in Washington to say, hey, remember what you're doing. It has implications back home. So there's a little bit of consolation in that.
Right. I was going to say no money tree out in front of the State House. And you mentioned the constituents that are leaning on the Republican representation. We've seen that play out in town halls around the country where Republican members of Congress are getting pushback from their constituents. I'm not sure that, well, I'm sure there's a block of voters that voted Trump that saw some of this coming, and perhaps they're enthused about what's happening. But it's hard to imagine that by and large, this seems to be outside of the parameters of what a lot of people voted for when they chose Trump in 2024. And you wonder, hey, is this the beginning of a shift that, from a political standpoint, MAGA, if it as it were, or this new version of MAGA, and classic Republicans might actually start to split down the middle? I mean, we may not see the formation of a new party, but it could be something like progressives and mainstream Democrats and MAGA and sort of traditional Republicans. We might see a fracturing within the party. Do you suspect that that's something, again, just from speaking with other speakers and your colleagues around the country, that there's this sentiment of, hey, wait a second, this isn't who we are. We may be fiscally conservative. We may have conservative social ideals, but we're not all about gutting the infrastructure of our nation.
So, yes, and two things I want to say about that. First, you are correct, but in terms of we've seen Republicans being, basically eviscerated at these town hall meetings throughout the country. But yes, last night there was a vote. Every single Republican voted for the president but one person. And just as much as they're getting pushback from their local communities, there is the Elon Musks of the world and the Republican, or the Trump, I should say, political machine that leans hard against them. And let me just tell you, as an incumbent member of your party, when your president calls you and asks you to do something, it's very hard for you to say no, whether it's a Democratic president or Republican president. You asked about the split in the Republican Party, but I will tell you that it already exists. In a lot of states, they have a Freedom Caucus, local Freedom Caucus that's still very split from what I would use the word traditional or established Republicans. And these are people who, in my personal assessment, they don't understand government and they don't receive any benefits from government. And they want that benefits given to the less fortunate stopped because they don't get anything. And they feel a little bit left out of the system, and they feel like they can't. It's not the government for them. They don't get any benefit from their local state governments in some of these states around the country, and they want to blow up the establishment and the leadership, whether it's a Democratic leadership or Republican leadership. And they feel also that they don't have to govern. It's a lot easier to sit in the back bench, as we like to say, and throw stones or rocks at leadership, or press conferences, or go on Twitter or Facebook or X or wherever and attack people. But it's very hard to actually sit in the chair that you have to be the responsible adult in the room and pass a budget, a balanced budget. I try to do it with about collaboration and incorporation with a lot of ideas from my caucus. We've been successful so far. I've done 5 budgets in 4 years. I have bipartisan support for my budgets. I don't know if we'll get bipartisan support going forward, but what I will tell you is I'm going to follow the same approach I have, which is to work within my caucus, but they also have to understand that things are changing. You said in your opening, there's no more opera money. There's no opera money. There's no CARES Act money. There's no infrastructure money. The federal spigot is shut off for what I would use the word additional money. Now, they're not cutting those additional funds we just talked about. What they're cutting, Bill, is programs that have existed under every Democrat and Republican administration since the 60s. Going back to Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy, these are programs that Ronald Reagan funded. These are programs that George Bush funded, George Bush 1 and George Bush 2 funded. And I can go on, that Richard Nixon funded, that Jimmy Carter funded, that Gerald Ford funded, that Obama funded, that Clinton funded, now are being cut. In some cases, at least proposed dramatically, significantly, and there's going to be a lot of pain inflicted on a lot of people.
I saw a New York Times column yesterday that suggested that Trump is the anti-FDR, and I can sort of imagine the analogy of the New Deal alphabet soup that we all learned about in whatever it was, 7th grade civics. It's almost like that soup is just literally getting dumped out the window in Washington right now, and whatever's left will just be scraps and broth. It feels that way. It feels, I think a lot of people are legitimately scared right now. And of course, there's world affairs. There's reasons why people are scared on a social level, certainly marginalized communities. We hear it all the time here that, geez, pick your marginalized person. And for whatever reason, be it immigration, be it LGBTQ rights, trans folks, there's so many people who, for a variety of reasons, are on edge right now. And rightfully so. In tandem with the fiscal reality. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Never before. I went to several neighborhood meetings recently. I tried to get out in the public. I've been in Richmond, Warwick, different parts of the state, talking to different people, people on the ideological spectrum on the far left, on the far right, and everywhere in between. And there's just an unbelievable broad sense of anxiety of what the future will hold. And, you mentioned a lot of things, but just in the FDA, we don't know if we're going to have vaccines. We're seeing an outbreak of measles now. Vaccines were never, my father was a doctor, so we didn't have a choice. My father said, line up and take the needle, and we did. And that's the way it was. And I didn't like it, but now I realize, I look back, it was for our own safety and protection. And a lot of people have this fear that vaccines cause, even though there's no scientific proof to link it to any kind of other diseases or causes or inflictions. And it's just a scary time. But what I will tell you is we're going to continue in the state of Rhode Island, at least under my leadership and under the House. We're going to continue to hold the line, to be responsive, respectful, and inclusive. And that's the way I govern. And I have a very good relationship with the Rhode Island House Republican Caucus. Now, I will tell you, we don't get along on every issue. We don't see eye to eye on every issue, but there's a mutual amount of respect for each other, and we both really want to make when I say we both, the Democrats and the Republicans, want to make the state better. How we do it and how we head in that direction is open to debate. And I try to listen, be collaborative. And I like to say I don't have a monopoly on the right way. Anybody can come up with a better idea or a better mousetrap. I'm all ears, and I'm willing to listen to that. We're going to continue to tackle the issues that we have control over. Later this week, I'm going to have a press conference on Thursday and release an 11-bill housing package for the 5th year in a row. We're going to continue to try to resolve that crisis, whatever it is. We've got good legislators. We're working hard on a lot of different issues, and we look forward to continuing to bring those to the people of Rhode Island.
A couple of local issues. Let's stick with housing right now. Housing is clearly one of the most significant issues facing the state on a variety of levels. We saw something that it was a tactic, that's for sure, out in Johnston, where an affordable housing development was set to be built. And then we saw a process by which the municipal government, Joe Policina Jr., the mayor, declared eminent domain on that parcel. Now they're going to build a new municipal facility. Everybody knows what happened there. I mean, let's be honest. They didn't want the affordable housing for a variety of reasons. They made the argument they can't absorb the students. They don't want the traffic. We heard the whole the planning board members say we don't want a Chad Brown of Johnston in 20 years. It definitely felt like on the sniff test, hey, we'd rather not have more poor people out in Johnston. These are the types of municipal actions that are on the front lines of housing. Your initial and immediate reaction to what took place in Johnston, and how does that inform how you approach other municipalities around the state in terms of saying, hey, you got to get your act together?
Well, we continue from the State House. We've passed 47 laws in the last 5 years to make it easier to build and reform the process. But as I tell everybody, we at the State House do not say yes or no to any project. Those decisions are made on a local level. Look, I would like to see more affordable housing in Johnston. I'd like to see more affordable housing throughout the state. And what I would tell you is that we also don't pick the locations. We leave that to the local people. I think the Senate President and myself at the time issued a statement on Johnston, and we said something like we were hopeful that the mayor and the town would repurpose the existing fire station, police station, municipal buildings that are being housed that are going to be moving into this new location into affordable housing. But we can't, and we don't, and nor should we, go into any community, Block Island or South Kingstown or Narragansett or Johnston or Woonsocket, and say, here's a piece of property on a corner of Elm Street and it's owned by the city and we're going to force you to put affordable housing. We don't do that. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. But we should encourage that particular municipality that you need to put more housing, but where you put it is at your decision. And how much you can support in that particular location is your decision. We're trying to do this with a collaborative approach. The 47 bills I've talked about and the 11 that are coming out on Thursday are all bills that we go through a long public vetting and process. And I think we need more affordable housing. But I am encouraged. I mean, everyone talks about the Johnston situation or even the Narragansett situation, but people don't realize that we passed a bond, $120 million, the single largest bond in the history of Rhode Island for affordable housing, that communities like South Kingstown have come forward with a big proposal. The courts overturned 20 units of affordable housing in Narragansett, that more communities are understanding it. Building permits are up significantly in Warwick and in Cranston. East Providence, the mayor, and Pawtucket, both those mayors are very proactive in affordable housing. So the tide is changing. People are understanding it more. People are getting more involved. But all these decisions of yes or no and where to locate a project are all made locally. All we can do is stimulate the process, making it easier, but we don't at the State House say yes or no to any project.
All right, we have that home rule doctrine here in Rhode Island, and it's sort of a version of federalism that applies on a statewide basis, and we see that play out in other areas, including schools to a certain extent. Washington Bridge, you had the oversight hearing, the joint oversight hearing. Not a lot gained from that in terms of...
I didn't expect a lot to come out because I knew the situation, but a lot of people, including yourself and the media, kept saying oversight, oversight, oversight. And I didn't want to look like to the public that we were hiding something, but there is multi-state, multi-jurisdictional litigation going on, and we're in an open bid process right now. So there wasn't a lot that could come out of that, but I wanted to have the hearing. My goal, which really was not answered per se, is what's the timeline? Because we don't know that because we're waiting for the bid. Part of the bid process is a design process. What's the timeline and what's the cost? And those are my concerns. That's when we initially started the oversight hearing process. When we were in the middle of that process, that's when the federal money became more in jeopardy, and that became part of the reason we wanted to have it. What is the likelihood? And again, Director Alviti answered that to the best of his ability at that moment, but he's subject to the Washington and federal whims and changes just like we are. So you're right, not a lot came out of it. I wasn't expecting a lot to come out of it because of the situation of where we are currently in terms of litigation and in terms of the bid process.
Are you nervous about this as a big picture issue right now from a funding standpoint? Do you think this bridge is going to ever get to a point where both sides, eastbound, westbound, are where they need to be sometime in the, let's call it in the next 10 years. Do you think that's a reasonable goal based on what you know?
Yes, I do. I think in 10 years, hopefully much sooner than that, it'll be solved. But you asked me, does it give me anxiety? Am I worried about it? I worry about the fiscal health of this state every single day. I was in Warwick and they said to me, what keeps you up at night, Speaker? I said, the fiscal health of this state, because we've had very good years. I have membership in the General Assembly that's been there 4 years, 6 years. They've seen the good times where how much money to spend, and we got federal money, what programs, what are we going to fund? Now it's what programs we're going to cut, which programs we're going to eliminate. And people have to understand there's going to be a lot of angst and a lot of anxiety and a lot of pain. But we have to live it. We cannot tax our way out of this. The federal component of the state budget is very significant.
You have over $3 million in your state war chest, so to speak, political campaign account. A lot
Something
of rumor.
like-
A lot of rumors that you may run for governor. Is that something you can offer any hint into right now?
There's really nothing to worry about. Honestly, the best thing that Joe Shekarchi can do for Joe Shekarchi's political future, if there is one, is to be the best possible speaker he can be. And honestly, that is my focus right now. And I'll let the future worry about itself. I have to concentrate on doing the right thing. To the best of my knowledge, at the taping of this, no one is announced for governor or any other office. It is way too early. I was sworn in a month ago to be speaker, and I really feel I have an obligation to do that job as well as I can do. And then I'll let the future worry about the future.
Speaker Shekarchi, thanks so much for your time as always and your work.
Thank you so much, Bill. Always enjoyed coming on your show. Thank you for the thoughtful questions.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram @BillBartholomew.